Imagine walking into a quiet diner in a small American town. The smell of fried potatoes and fresh coffee hangs in the air. Families are laughing at their tables, and you're just looking forward to one thing: a hot meal after a long, exhausting day. Now imagine the owner marching straight up to you, crossing her arms and saying, "I know who you are. I don't agree with your politics, and I will not serve you." Every conversation in the room stops. Every eye is on you. You've been publicly rejected, not for who you are as a person, but for what you believe. Most people would snap. They'd argue, yell, or humiliate the owner on social media. Some would turn it into a political war. Boycotts, angry headlines, division spreading like wildfire. But JD Vance did something that no one in that diner and no one in that town could have predicted. Instead of rage, he showed restraint. Instead of revenge, he showed kindness. And that single choice didn't just flip the story on its head. It sparked a chain of events that would change one restaurant, one small town, and even the people who once despised him. Because sometimes the most shocking act isn't anger, it's compassion. And this story proves that one moment of kindness can rewrite everything. But before we get to the jaw-dropping twist, let's rewind and start at the very beginning. It was just another rainy evening in Oakwood when JD Vance pulled into the gravel parking lot of Maple Creek Diner. The neon open sign buzzed in the window, casting a red glow across puddles from the storm. He hadn't eaten all day, and the smell of coffee and fried potatoes drifting through the glass promised exactly the comfort he was craving. Inside, families filled the booths. Country music played softly from the ceiling, and a waitress with a warm smile waved him toward a seat. JD slid into a booth, scanning the menu. Meatloaf with mashed potatoes, the special of the night, made him think of his grandmother's cooking back home. For a brief moment, everything felt simple, but then the air shifted. The diner's owner, Melissa, emerged in the kitchen, flowers still on her apron. Her eyes locked on JD, and the smile vanished from her face. She whispered urgently with the waitress, and soon every conversation in the room had gone silent. Melissa approached his table, arms folded, her voice sharp but steady. "I know who you are, Mr. Vance. I don't agree with your politics, and I don't feel comfortable serving you here. This is my diner, and I get to decide who eats here." The clink of a coffee cup hitting the counter broke the silence. All eyes were on him. JD's first instinct? To fight back. To remind her that refusing service over politics was unfair, even wrong. To call out the humiliation of being rejected in front of an entire room of strangers. But instead, he paused. He looked at Melissa, looked at the waitress fidgeting uncomfortably beside her, and then did something no one expected. He folded the menu, set it neatly back on the table, and said quietly, "I understand. It's your choice." Then he stood, wished her a good evening, and walked out into the night. No anger, no scene, just calm acceptance. And that single moment of restraint was the spark that would set off a chain reaction no one in that diner could have seen coming. As the diner door jingled shut behind him, JD stepped out into the cool night air. The smell of rain still hung in the breeze, and the warm glow of the diner lights spilled out across the gravel lot. His stomach growled, but the emptiness in his chest weighed heavier than hunger. He slid into the driver's seat of his car, every detail of the last 5 minutes replaying in his head. The crossed arms, the silence of crowd, the feeling of rejection. Most people in his position would have already been scrolling through Twitter, typing furiously about being humiliated, calling for boycotts, and rallying their followers to attack the diner. A single angry post could have ruined Melissa's business overnight, and everyone inside knew it. But JD didn't open Twitter. Instead, he opened his contacts. He scrolled past reporters, past political aides, past campaign donors, until he landed on a name only a handful of people in that town had ever heard of. He tapped the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a voice answered. JD leaned back against the seat, staring at the glowing diner sign through the windshield. "Hey," he said quietly, "remember that idea we talked about last month? I think I just found the perfect place." There was a pause on the other end, and then JD added, "Trust me, this is going to surprise everyone." He hung up, turned the key, and pulled out of the lot. The radio clicked on, an old Johnny Cash song filling the silence as his taillights disappeared down the dark road. Inside the diner, Melissa explained herself to curious customers. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uneasy. The waitress, Talia, couldn't shake the look on JD's face when he left. Not angry, not bitter, just sad. None of them knew it yet, but that quiet exit and that one phone call had already set something much bigger in motion. And by the very next morning, the entire town would feel it. At dawn the next morning, Main Street was unusually busy. The neon sign of Maple Creek Diner flickered against the pale sky as a line of people stretched across the sidewalk. Some clutched steaming gas station coffee. Others chatted in small groups, but all of them were waiting for the same thing: the diner doors to open. Talia, the waitress, stopped dead in her tracks as she rounded the corner. She'd expected an empty lot and the usual handful of early risers. Instead, nearly 30 strangers were standing outside. Her first thought hit like a punch. Protesters. Had JD Vance posted about the rejection? Had angry crowds come to shame Melissa? Or worse, shut the diner down? Heart pounding, she pushed through the crowd. "Excuse me," she said, fumbling for her keys. "I work here. What's going on?" A woman in a red coat turned with a smile. "We're just waiting for breakfast. Is it true JD Vance recommended this place?" Talia froze. "What? No, that can't." A man cut her off, pulling out his phone. "He did. I saw the post last night. Said the meatloaf smelled amazing and that this place had the best home cooking in the county. He told people to support local businesses, even if they didn't want his business." Before Talia could respond, the unmistakable logo of a news van rolled up to the curb. A reporter jumped out, microphone in hand, camera already rolling. "Perfect timing," he said breathlessly. "Miss, do you work here? Can you give us a statement about the viral post?" "Viral post?" Talia echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. She hurried inside, locking the door behind her. The diner was still dark, silent except for the faint buzz of the refrigerator. Her hands trembled as she checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Melissa. Moments later, the back door banged open. Melissa stumbled in, hair disheveled, face pale. "Have you seen it?" she gasped. Talia blinked. "Seen what?" Melissa thrust her phone forward. On the screen was JD Vance's post, already racking up thousands of shares. "Turn away tonight at Maple Creek Diner because the owner didn't agree with my politics." That's her right, and I respect it. But the meatloaf smelled incredible, and the people inside looked happy. Small businesses are the heart of America, even when they don't want my business. If you're nearby, check it out. Support local. Talia stared at the words in disbelief. He was sending people here. After being rejected, he was sending them here. Melissa's face flushed red as she whispered, "It doesn't make sense. Is this a trick? Is he trying to make me look bad?" But as the crowd outside grew louder, chanting for coffee and pancakes, one thing became very clear. This wasn't a boycott. It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. By mid-morning, Maple Creek Diner was packed to the walls. Every booth was filled, the counter stools were occupied, and a waiting list had already formed at the door. The smell of pancakes and bacon mingled with the chatter of customers, many of whom kept mentioning JD Vance's name like he was some kind of legend who had blessed the place. Melissa moved stiffly between tables, her smile polite but tight. She delivered menus, refilled coffee cups, and forced small talk, but every time someone said, "We heard JD recommended this place," she flinched as if struck. When she finally slipped into her office during a lull, Talia found her sitting at the desk, head in her hands. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why would he do this? Why send people here after what I did to him?" Talia hesitated. She'd never seen her boss like this. Melissa was usually strong, sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who never admitted weakness. But now her hands trembled and her eyes were red. Melissa's anger from the night before had vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous: doubt. "I humiliated him, Talia. I embarrassed him in front of everyone. And instead of fighting back, he turned me into the most popular diner in the county. Nobody is that nice. especially not in politics. This has to be a trick. Talia shifted uncomfortably. Maybe it's not a trick. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he just forgave you. Melissa let out a bitter laugh. Forgive me? After I told him he wasn't welcome in my restaurant? People don't forgive like that. They strike back. They destroy you. But the truth gnawed at her. Every hour the diner stayed full. Every time the cash register overflowed with bills, the weight in Melissa's chest grew heavier. Success didn't feel like success. It felt like guilt. By the end of the week, exhaustion lined her face. She barely slept, jumping at every mention of JD's name, every flash of a camera outside. To the world, Maple Creek Diner had become a symbol of small-town resilience. But inside Melissa's heart, it had become a mirror, reflecting a choice she couldn't take back. And just when she thought the tension couldn't build any higher, an envelope arrived. Cream-colored, heavy, with no return address. Melissa almost tossed it into the pile of angry letters and political commentary that flooded the diner daily. But something about it stopped her. The handwriting was steady, deliberate, almost old-fashioned. It was from JD Vance. And what it said inside would shake Melissa more than the rejection, more than the viral crowds, more than anything that had happened so far. That evening, after the last table had been cleared and the neon open sign switched off, Melissa sat alone in a corner booth. In front of her lay the cream-colored envelope she had avoided all day. The diner was silent now, but the echo of clinking glasses and laughter still seemed to hang in the air. Her fingers hovered over the flap. Part of her didn't want to open it, afraid it was a trap, a political jab disguised as politeness. But curiosity finally won. She slid her thumb under the seal and unfolded the letter. The first words made her heart skip. Dear Ms. Hargrove, first, I want to thank you for your honesty. In a world where people often hide behind smiles, your directness was refreshing. Melissa blinked. This wasn't what she expected. She braced herself and kept reading. My grandmother used to tell me that when someone rejects you, the best response is kindness. Not because it makes you look good, but because everyone has reasons for what they do, reasons we may never fully understand. Melissa's chest tightened. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't threatening her. He was sincere. I didn't recommend your diner to embarrass you. I recommended it because even in my short time there, I could see Maple Creek was special. The way your staff looked at you, the smell of real home cooking, the bulletin board covered in photos of local kids. These are the places that hold communities together. They matter. Melissa pressed a hand over her mouth. Tears she didn't expect stung her eyes. We may disagree politically, but I believe we both want the same things. Good jobs, safe neighborhoods, and hope for our children's futures. You don't have to like me, and you don't have to serve me if I ever return. That's your right. All I ask is that you keep doing what you're doing. Serving good food and giving your town a place to come together. That matters more than any political divide. Signed simply, JD. Melissa stared at the page, her breath shaky. She had turned him away with anger. He had responded with kindness. And now, with every word of his letter, she felt the ground beneath her shift. This wasn't politics anymore. This was personal. She folded the letter carefully, as if it might crumble in her hands, and slipped it back into the envelope. For the first time since the night she sent him out into the rain, Melissa didn't feel angry or defensive or even proud. She felt small, and she felt changed. What she didn't know yet was that this letter was only the beginning, because someone else in town carried a secret, one that tied JD's kindness to a past Melissa never could have imagined. Melissa tucked the letter back into her apron, but her waitress Talia noticed something different. The sharp edge in her boss's voice had dulled, replaced by a silence that felt heavier than words. Later that night at home, Talia couldn't stop thinking about the letter. She replayed the words Melissa had read aloud, especially the line about JD's grandmother teaching him to respond to rejection with kindness. Her own grandmother, Eliza, was waiting in her armchair when Talia walked in, the glow of a lamp highlighting her silver braid. Eliza had raised her since childhood and had a way of seeing through her granddaughter's thoughts before she spoke them. You look troubled, Eliza said softly. Talia sank onto the couch and began to explain everything. The rejection of the diner, JD's calm exit, the viral crowds, and now the letter. She repeated the part. For the first time that night, Eliza's expression shifted. Something flickered across her face. Recognition. Did he mention her name? Eliza asked carefully. No, Talia said. Just that his grandmother taught him that lesson. Why? Eliza was silent for a long moment, her hands gripping the armrest. Finally, she stood and walked slowly to her bedroom. When she returned, she carried an old, worn photo album bound in faded blue leather. She opened it on the coffee table, turning brittle pages filled with black and white photos until she stopped at one. There, she whispered, pointing to a picture of two teenage girls sitting on a porch. One was clearly a younger Eliza, slim, serious, eyes sharp even in youth. Beside her sat another girl, wild curls spilling from her braid, a fierce smile lighting up her face. That's Beverly, Eliza said, her voice thick with memory, but everyone called her Mama. Talia's breath caught. Mama, as in JD Vance's grandmother? Eliza nodded slowly. We grew up together in Kentucky. Best friends since the time we could walk. Tough as nails, loyal to the bone. If Beverly loved you, she'd fight the whole world for you. And if she didn't, Eliza chuckled softly. Well, you'd know it. Talia stared at the photo. The fierce smile, the arm slung protectively over young Eliza's shoulder. This was a woman who had raised JD, the one whose lesson of kindness now echoed in their small-town diner. Life had come full circle. The grandson of Eliza's childhood friend had walked into her granddaughter's workplace, and instead of anger, he had shown the very same strength Beverly once carried. It wasn't just coincidence. It was connection, and it was about to bring JD back to Maple Creek Diner in a way no one expected. Melissa didn't sleep that night. The words from JD's letter replayed in her head again and again. I just ask that you keep doing what you're doing. That matters more than any political disagreement. By morning, she had made a decision. For the first time in years, she admitted to herself that she had been wrong, and she wanted to make it right. But how? That's when Talia spoke up. With nervous courage, she shared her grandmother's revelation, that Eliza had once been best friends with JD's grandmother, Beverly, the very woman who had passed down the lesson of kindness. Melissa's eyes widened. You're telling me the grandmother who shaped him, the one he talks about all the time, was best friends with your grandmother? Talia nodded. She has photos, stories. She even still wears a pin Beverly gave her when they were 16. Melissa sat back, stunned. It's like fate, she whispered. Then, after a long pause, she said, I need to invite him back. Not for politics, not for cameras, but for dinner, for the meal he never got. That afternoon, Melissa drafted a handwritten invitation. With Talia's help, the words came out carefully. JD, thank you for your letter. Your kindness in the face of my rejection has made me reconsider many things. I would like to invite you to dinner at Maple Creek Diner this Friday evening, after closing. No cameras, no press. Just a meal, an apology, and a chance to talk as people, not politics. There's something else, too. Talia's grandmother, Eliza Reynolds, believes she was childhood friends with your grandmother, Beverly. She has photographs and memories she'd like to share if you're interested. Sincerely, Melissa Hargrove. The invitation was delivered quietly, with no fanfare. For 2 days, there was no response. Then, on Wednesday, Melissa's phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. M. Hargrove, this is JD Vance. Thank you for your invitation. I'd be honored to join you Friday at 7. The connection to my grandmother is especially meaningful. May I bring dessert? Melissa read the message aloud to Talia, her hands trembling. He said, yes, he's actually coming. Friday arrived faster than anyone expected. By 6 p.m., the last customers had cleared out, the neon sign had been switched off, and the diner transformed. A single table was set near the window, not fancy, but warm. A tablecloth, cloth napkins, homemade rolls in a basket, and Melissa's best meatloaf recipe waiting in the kitchen. Eliza arrived first, wearing her blue dress and the silver pin Beverly had given her decades ago. She carried her old photo album like a treasure chest. Talia stayed close, helping her grandmother to her seat. At 6:55, headlights pulled into the gravel lot. Melissa froze at the door, smoothing her apron, her hands trembling. Then came the knock. She opened it to find JD standing there, holding a bakery box tied with string. He smiled gently. "Thank you for inviting me back. I brought apple pie." Melissa swallowed hard, then stepped aside. "Come in. Tonight, the diner is yours." JD's eyes moved past her, landing on Eliza. The moment he saw her, he went still. His voice softened. "Mrs. Reynolds?" Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "You look just like your Uncle Jimmy, Beverly's brother. Same eyes." JD blinked, stunned. "You knew my grandmother when she was young?" Eliza smiled through her tears and patted the chair beside her. "Sit down, son. I have stories to tell you." And as the three of them gathered around the table, Melissa, still burdened with guilt, Eliza, carrying the weight of memory, and JD, holding a piece of his past he never expected to find. The first plates were served. The meal that began as an apology would turn into something much larger. The beginning of healing, not just for one man and one diner, but for an entire community. Dinner at Maple Creek Diner stretched late into the evening. Between bites of meatloaf and sips of coffee, Eliza flipped through her photo album, showing JD snapshots of a fierce, smiling Beverly, the grandmother who had shaped his life. JD listened with reverence, laughing at long-forgotten stories, eyes shining when Eliza revealed details he had never heard. Melissa sat across from him, quiet at first, then finally spoke. Her voice wavered as she admitted, "I judged you before I even knew you. I turned you away, not because of who you are, but because of my own pain. My family lost everything years ago, and I blame people who shared your politics. That doesn't excuse what I did, but I am sorry." JD nodded, his tone steady but gentle. "I understand more than you think. I grew up watching good people lose everything too. That's why I got into politics in the first place. We probably disagree on a lot, but we both want struggling communities to survive." Something softened in Melissa's face for the first time since that night. The wall she had built crumbled, replaced by something simpler, humility. After dinner, JD insisted on clearing the plates. As he gathered dishes, Melissa asked the question that had haunted her all week. "Why did you do it? Why send people here? Why help me after I humiliated you?" JD set the plates down gently and met her eyes. "Because that's what my grandmother would have done. She believed second chances can change lives." And because he hesitated, "I had already made a call." Melissa frowned. "A call?" JD leaned against the counter, explaining that the night she turned him away, he hadn't called reporters or advisors. He had called a friend, someone who ran a small business investment fund focused on struggling towns. Maple Creek had already been on their radar, but JD's experience at the diner convinced him it was exactly the kind of place worth supporting. Melissa's breath caught. "You mean?" A week later, the confirmation arrived in writing. Maple Creek Diner had been approved for a major investment. Enough money to renovate the aging kitchen, expand into the empty storefront next door, and hire new staff with full health insurance. The same diner Melissa once worried might close its doors was now poised to double in size. The cash register would no longer just keep the lights on. It would provide stability for dozens of families in the community. And the ripple effect didn't stop there. Within 6 months, the fund JD had connected them and invested in half a dozen other businesses in town. The shuttered hardware store reopened. A local movie theater began renovations. A vacant lot downtown was cleared to build a small business incubator. Maple Creek wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. The very diner that had once turned JD Vance away had become the spark of new life for an entire community. And every morning, when Melissa flipped the sign to open, she remembered his words. Kindness matters more than any political disagreement. In today's divided world, it's easy to believe that anger is the only answer, that if someone rejects you, you have to strike back harder, that kindness is weakness. But JD Vance proved the opposite inside a small-town diner that never expected to become the center of a national story. Instead of lashing out, he chose compassion. Instead of revenge, he chose forgiveness. And that single choice didn't just rewrite the fate of one restaurant. It helped revive an entire community. Melissa, once hardened by loss, learned that kindness can be more powerful than bitterness. Talia discovered that her grandmother's past was woven into a story that stretched across generations. And a town that had been quietly fading found new life. Because one man refused to let rejection define him. The most shocking thing about this story wasn't the viral post, or the news coverage, or even the investment fund. The real shock was the bridge that was built. The decision to meet hostility with dignity and division with grace. And maybe that's the lesson we all need right now. Because if one moment of kindness can transform a diner, a town, and even hearts on opposite sides of the political divide, imagine what it could do in our own lives. So I'll leave you with this question. If kindness can change Maple Creek, what could it change in your world? If this story inspired you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a reminder that compassion still has power. And don't stop here. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now to discover another moment where kindness triumphed over division. Because in times like these, maybe the most revolutionary act isn't winning the argument. It's choosing to treat each other with dignity. If you really like this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button